Welcome back to day 2 of Live from the TGA. If you haven't done so already, be sure to follow us on social media at Transplant Games of America. Keep sending us your pictures using the hashtag TGA16CLE. We've got a full day of events planned for you, but let's take a look back and see what happened yesterday. Joining me now on stage are Colleen Wood and Jess Kyrez. Now, Colleen, you've been hard at work on a film all about Jess's son, Joe. Joe was a police officer killed in the line of duty and then donated the organs to save even more lives. So I guess my question for both of you are, what does the film focus on?
You just said it. It's the legacy of his son, Joe, that Jess has taken on and just sharing with the world.
Jess, sorry, excuse me, your hat just keeps throwing me off.
That's okay.
What has been your role in the film?
Well, my role is to keep the legacy alive of my son and what kind of a person he was, and what I do after his death is mainly what I do.
And what you do is also continue to honoring the police officers and the firefighters who continue to kind of save lives with their work and when they pass away and also donate organs. So can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, matter of fact, see, I've been coming to the game since 2002, was my first game. And all the people I meet, I always tell them to go back home and tell the police department about my son and get me a patch. And so they've been giving me patches throughout the years. And so I used to keep them in an album at one time, but I had a dream and God showed me that they shouldn't be in an album, they should be on a cloth. So the first thing came to my mind was to put them on the quilt. And so I went around for about 3 years looking for somebody to make me quilts with all these patches. And I ran across one young lady that was willing to do it, but she wanted to charge me something like $1,800 per quilt. I had enough to do about 5 quilts at the time. Believe it or not, within a matter of days, I ran across one of my wife's uncles I haven't seen in a long time, and I asked him what he's been up to, and he told me that he's been at a senior citizens upholstery class, been doing that. And as soon as he said that, I just said, wow, upholstery. He says, I didn't know you did that kind of you could do that kind of stuff. And he goes, oh yeah, he goes, they'll teach you how to make a dress. No sooner he said, you could make a dress, I says, how do I sign up? And so I signed up, and within 24 hours, I was in the class, and I was learning how to sew. And it took me a year to make my first quilt, learn how to sew and make my first quilt. After I made my first quilt, I felt so proud, not of my accomplishment, but where Joe had led me to. Making quilts. So when I made that quilt, I said, you know what? I'm the kind of a person, I look behind me. Who else is hurting? And who's there are the policemen. I mean, I have all these patches. So I started making quilts for fallen police officers' families as I meet them. And I've probably made about at least a dozen already I've given away in California. And matter of fact, I made one here for Cleveland, Ohio. Andrew S. Dunn, he's from Sandusky, and I made him a quilt and I presented it to him about a year ago for 2 little boys, and so I made 2 of them for the family. So I will continue in doing that as long as the patches keep coming in. I'm going to keep doing it. So, yes.
Well, it's definitely a way, because I mean, I know you're still probably hurting over the passing of your son, but you're helping others get through it as well, which is fantastic. And Colleen, I know that you have personal ties to the game as well, and it's not just through Joe and his father and this film. So can you tell me a little bit about Lacey?
Yes, my daughter had a heart transplant 25 years ago, which is pretty long time, and she's 27 now, just turned 27. And I think there's a lot of other recipient families that look for ways to thank their donor family, especially the ones we haven't, like us, where we haven't been able to meet and say thank you. And it was my idea just to, it was my way to make a film. And when I looked for somebody to make a film about, there's this guy, because he's doing great things, and I wanted to help him share that story in a bigger way.
So how did you two meet?
We met at something with, right after Joe's passing, we met at an NBA basketball game.
That's what I was
Kings
going to say,
game.
Kings game in Sacramento.
Well, guys, that's all we have time for today, but thank you so much for sharing your story, and I cannot wait to see this documentary when it comes out. Have a good day.
Great,
All right,
thanks.
Thank you.
Yesterday, teams started filing in, and the welcome reception began around 2 o'clock. Bill is joined back with me now. So Bill, can you kind of take me through that reception and what it really meant?
Well, the first day is always pretty dynamic. We've got upwards of 4,000 people day one that are there to pick up their credentials and get ready for the games. The welcome reception is really a way to greet people that you haven't seen in a couple of years and welcome new people on board, and it was a phenomenal event. Place was packed. There were a lot of hugs and people haven't seen each other, tears, going on. So we were thrilled. Everybody looked like they were pumped up for Cleveland, and it was exciting.
So this event is really for the athletes. So what kind of do you see from new members who get to come and witness this?
Well, first of all, let me correct you a little bit. It's not just for the athletes. Donor families and supporters that are here are as important an element as the athletes. So having them all here together kind of matches up. I don't want to call them bookends, but you've got the competitors and athletes who are recipients and living donors, and then you have the donor families whose loved ones created the opportunity for the athletes and competitors to have that second chance at life. So having them all together in one room, in one area is a huge demonstration of the benefit of donation and transplantation.
Definitely an emotional event all over, huh?
Yeah, there were a lot of tears and a lot of laughter. We had a good time.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Here at the Transplant Games, it really is all about those affected by organ donations and their families. So with me now are Leanne and Riley Carrier. Now, Riley, you have had 2 kidney transplants, and the first one was from your mom, Leanne. So can you kind of tell me about your journey and when it all started?
It started when I was about 8 months old. I had my first one, and then that one failed, and then I had to have the second one when I was about 5 years old. She can tell you more about the story. I was really young, so I don't really have a full grasp of it.
Riley's kidneys failed when she was a month old. She had her first transplant when she was a baby. I gave her that kidney. Gradually that one failed, and then her older half-sister, Jody, gave her the second kidney.
So was there any reason behind the kidneys failing, or did they just kind of not want to work?
Her initial kidney failure when she was an infant, we don't really have a name, just some congenital abnormality. Gradually she had a chronic rejection of the first kidney and then needed the second transplant.
So Riley, you don't really remember anything
Yeah.
from the first one, and probably vague memories of your second. So kind of what's it been like to grow up as an organ recipient?
I don't really think about it that much unless I take my medicine or I get my blood drawn once a month. So normally I'm just an average kid going to college and
I mean, you really don't know anything
Yeah.
different. So you said earlier that this is the first time at the games. So what kind of are you expecting, or what are you looking to get into?
I'm looking to meet other recipients, other donors, because I've never met anyone else that had transplants. So
Pretty excited. What are you looking forward to?
Same thing, just meeting other families and hearing other stories.
Well, tonight is the opening ceremonies, and I think you have a pretty big part in it. Is that right?
yeah, I'm lighting the cauldron tonight.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And it's my first transplant games too, so I think we're kind of figuring it out all together. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you at the opening ceremonies tonight. And what team are you on?
We're actually from Arizona.
Well, I'm definitely Team Ohio, but I'll definitely be rooting for you always. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Anyone walking into the village can definitely see a lot of blue spinning pinwheels across the street. So Rachel, can you tell me a little more about what each one represents?
Absolutely. So the Pinwheel Project was born about a year ago, and it was a bit of a pipe dream, you know, like, oh, let's get thousands of pinwheels and put them out on Mall C. And I'm thinking, all right, you know. But over time, you know, the idea just sort of kept on living, and what we ended up doing was we actually contracted with a provider who created the pinwheels for us. And believe it or not, it's difficult to find pinwheels in blue and green. So we had someone create the pinwheels for us and assemble them, thank goodness. And we have 3,185 pinwheels out on Mall C, and each pinwheel represents one person on the Ohio transplant waiting list. If you go out, you'll see each piece of bike rack also has a sign on it, and different signs have different stats. So they talk about one person, one donor being able to save up to 8 lives, one donor being able to save or heal up to 50 lives with tissue and eye and organ transplant. We also talk about the 76,000 corneal transplants that happen each year. So there's a lot of stats out there as well. We wanted it to be a representation of the donor, the transplant waiting list in Ohio. We also wanted it to be an educational piece for the public. People walking by who might not know what's going on or might not know a lot about organ tissue and eye transplant. So we wanted to make it serve multiple purposes.
Well, what a creative way to kind of draw people in and get that mission statement out there.
Thank you so much. You know, it's funny, everybody's been really busy working on the transplant games, and my life has really been centered around pinwheels, you know, and it sounds kind of silly, but I think it really does make an impact. When you walk in, it is one of the very first things you see, and I'm very proud to look out there and see them all spinning in the wind. It's a very windy spot, so it works out nicely. So appreciate the opportunity to be able to put them out there.
Definitely a nice touch to the city of Cleveland.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's something very important to me. I had a transplant in 2003, so we've been talking about it for years to try to get together and see some people that have gone through the same kind of things that we've gone through.
The transplant games are a way to come celebrate the gift of life and health and vitality that we've all been given through our organ transplants, and it's just a really fun way to gather together with friends and other people who have been in the same situation, and just enjoy life, live life, be grateful, be active, and be healthy.
They mean a whole lot to me. I received a kidney transplant in New Orleans in 2007. I've been going to the games since 2008, and I have really been enjoying them, and I really appreciate my donor family for a second chance at life.
It's a great support group. It's to help promote organ donation and how successful it can be, and it's a big party.
Transplant games, they are an opportunity for all of us who have received an organ or donated an organ, or members of a family that have lost someone, to get together, celebrate, participate in sports where we might not be able to do something like that, and just have a good time and meet new people. So it's really cool.
Transplant games mean partly a way to demonstrate, because I've been with 2 kidney transplants for 4 decades, that you can survive pretty well over time. And of course, the main reason we're here in a lot of ways is not only to demonstrate how well we can do with our health over a period of time, but it's to promote the fact that this is worth donating organs for, because it's not like a cure, it's life extension. I learned that a while ago. It's really important life extension for those of us who are chronically ill, and you can do a lot by donating organs. So we can help promote that by what we do in the games. It's the whole idea.
It's the celebration of a second chance at life, and for myself, I've been out a total of 25 years. I've had 2 heart transplants. My donor family is able to come to these games, and so is my sister, who went with me to the very first games in 1992. My wife wasn't able to attend this year, but she's 20 years out on her liver transplant. So donation is a very close connection to us, and this is celebrating life, and really to honor all the donor families, especially your own, but honoring all the donor families.
This is a reinsurgence from my years past. I left it for a couple years, now I'm back. I just show everybody that since my donor family's from Cleveland, I'll just show them how well they treated me.
Well, we are the Northeast Ohio Organ Procurement Organization, so we're the nonprofit organization that brings awareness to Northeast Ohio residents to just register to become organ, eye, and tissue donors.
We are an international support group, and we support anyone who's involved in transplantation, whether it's somebody who's received a transplant or somebody's waiting, living donors, donor families, or anyone who's involved in transplants, such as transplant professionals.
We are promoting our specialty transplant pharmacies. We just opened one here in Cleveland just 2 months ago. So we are here to support all transplant recipients, donors, supporters, and families.
The American Liver Foundation is here supporting the Transplant Games of America because the mission behind this event is so important to our work. We're here representing patients that have received liver transplants and those that are still waiting for transplants.
We support the Transplant Games every year, and we have for many years. We make 2 different immunosuppressants, one of which has been around over 20 years, and many of the patients here, the recipients here, are on our products, primarily Prograf, which is a long-time immunosuppressant. So yeah, we support the Transplant Games every year.
UNOS is so excited to be here. We've had so many great people to come through and talk about their experience as being an organ recipient. And UNOS is unveiling a brand new program here at the Transplant Games for the first time ever. And it's called the UNOS Ambassador Program. And we're just encouraging our recipients as they go out and share their story to share the story of UNOS, which is their story, and how we match that life-saving organ to them. And we've had such great participation today.
The Transplant Games aren't all about the athletic events. So joining me now is Sally Coburn, and you're kind of in charge of a quilt pinning ceremony that remembers those who have been lost and given their lives, correct?
That is true, Rachel.
So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, the quilt pinning ceremony and the quilt pinning making of quilts started some time ago with Gift of Life Michigan and OPOs like Life Bank in Cleveland, where they would honor their loved ones. And it's a way of remembering and honoring loved ones who've given their lives so others could live. And it just is a way of living into history and commemorating those lives of loved ones we've lost, and a way of remembering them and keeping it forever. And when we quilt pin, we take the pins and make them into a permanent quilt, so it's a permanent remembrance of loved ones lost. I brought a quilt today, and this is a sample of a quilt. This was a quilt that was pinned in 2012 at the games in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then it was presented as a quilt, a final quilt, in Houston in 2014. So this is a good example of how we remember our loved ones in different ways that people want to use their artistry to remember their loved ones.
Well, there are definitely a lot of memories on this quilt. So how long does it really take to make one?
Well, it varies on how people want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, a lot of them put pictures on and then have an iron-on type of thing. Others do stitchery, so it could take. Some spend hours and hours putting them together. Others have some of them made a little bit more formally by having some professional stitchery. Mm-hmm. So it varies, but it's just a reflection of personal feelings about someone's loved one.
So all these quilts, will people at the games be able to see the finished quilts?
Yes, they will. We brought 4 quilts that we pinned in Houston that are finished quilts that will be on display, and then people from all over the country bring their own quilts, and they will be displayed in the grand ballroom as soon as they can get them hung. They're hanging them as quickly as they're coming in, so hopefully they'll be up between today and tomorrow, and they'll be on display for the rest of the games in the grand ballroom.
And I know that people got to bring their own squares to the games, so can you talk to me about the quilt pinning ceremony?
The quilt pinning ceremony will take place Monday afternoon from 3 to 5, and people are encouraged to come whether they bring a quilt square or not, just because it's a wonderful celebration of life. And so the people who bring the quilt squares are asked to come up and pin their square and then tell a little bit about their loved one. And it's just a really comforting celebration, and it's loved by donors and recipients alike. So
definitely a celebration of the life and the life that gets to live on because of them.
Correct.
So thank you so much, Sally. I'm looking forward to looking at all those quilts.
Thanks, Rachel, for having me.
Before I go, let's take a look and see all the events in store for today. That's all we have time for our first show of the day. Be sure to tune back in at 3:30 and keep sending us your pictures using the hashtag TGA16CLE. I'm your host, Rachel Walbrown, and I'll see you later.